Hi, fourth grade, Miss Keeley here. I want to start off by saying to all of you that you guys blew me away with how awesome your last project came out. I know that that was a really long project. Um, there was a lot of repetitive, tedious little steps in it, but every single time one of you sent me a picture of either your progress on how it was coming out and then the final actual project, I was just beyond happy with how they came out. You guys did a really, really great job. And you guys did that all on your own from home. So really awesome, awesome job. Okay. But thankfully that project is over because I feel like you guys were working on it forever and we're going to start a new project. This is one of my favorite projects that I've ever done, ever. Um, and in the beginning you might be like, what is this? But I promise it's kind of cool. It's really fun. We are focusing on symmetry. So let me just show you guys a little bit about symmetry before we actually get into the start of the project. So basically, if we take a look at all of these different images on the screen, you'll notice that there's something very similar about all of them. They all have this dashed line being cut through the middle of them. And if you notice, on either sides of that dashed line, it is exactly the same. If you were to fold them in half, they would match up perfectly. If you look at them, they match up perfectly. So that means that it is symmetrical when it is exactly the same on both sides. And that dashed line that cuts through the middle, you can call that a line of symmetry. Okay. Um, I always like to remember that the word symmetrical or symmetry begins with an S. Um, and the word same begins with an S also. So think symmetrical means same. Look on both sides. If it's same, it's symmetrical. Okay. Then the opposite of symmetrical is asymmetrical. So when things are not the same on both sides, um, you could say that they're asymmetrical. So over here is some examples of asymmetrical. So for instance, if we were to draw that line of symmetry, that dashed line through this rabbit, um, there's a head and ears on one side, and then on the other side, it's just empty space because it's the back side of the rabbit. So that is an example of asymmetrical. Okay. Um, so for our project, we're going to focus on making it symmetrical. And so what we're going to do is, this is kind of like the inspiration. Ours are probably going to look a little bit different. Um, I like to call them name monsters because these like weird, creepy little drawings are actually people's names. They're going to be your name hidden in here, and it's going to be reflected onto both sides. These aren't specifically symmetrical because if you look here, they have flowers on this side and they have like little food item, it looks like. Um, but some of them are symmetrical. So when we're going to make ours, we're going to make ours symmetrical. Okay. So that's just like the inspiration. Of course, you guys are just going to do step by step each week with me. I think it's going to take maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks, depending on how much time we need. Um, and so what you're going to need is a blank piece of white paper, just like this. You're going to need a pencil. Um, I have a Sharpie here, but I actually end up using a crayon. And so what you're going to do first is taking your paper and holding it vertical up and down the long way. You're going to fold your piece of paper in half the long way. A lot of people say like that's hot dog bun style folding, where it's like a long skinny fold, okay? And just make sure that you line up the sides evenly, put a nice crease through the middle, and then you're ready to open it back up, okay? The next step, you're going to be taking a pencil. So in a second, I'm rotating my paper, will be helpful for you guys, and you're going to take a pencil, and you are going to be writing your name big. Pick, if you are somebody who has a really, really long first name, then maybe think about, do you have a nickname that is a little bit shorter? Do you have another, like maybe your middle name is shorter, maybe your last name is shorter? But so you can see here, I'm going to write Keely, And so I'm trying to write it big so that it fills up most of the height. And I'm only drawing it on this middle line. Okay. So that's like, if you write your name like on your paper, there's like a name line. We're going to pretend that this line of symmetry through the middle is our line name. And I'm trying my best to draw it nice and big. It pretty much fills up most of the space. So that's the first step, is like actually writing your name big. And it honestly, I've had a lot of students in the past. I mean, it seems simple to write your name, but to get it all spaced out nicely and at a good size, you might need to do it again and again, which is totally fine. You can always erase it, flip it over, try again. But so then what we're going to do is we need to connect all of our letters together, kind of like cursive. So if you know cursive and you wanted to draw this out in cursive, you could. This isn't exactly how cursive connects together, but we just are trying to connect all the letters with like one line, okay? So you can see I'm just kind of letting it kind of drape across to each of them. And then you just want to make sure that you have them connect back to your line of symmetry. And then we're going to fold it in half again. And I was just kind of experimenting to see if you could see through to the other side, which most of you will not be able to see through. So that's why I'm thinking about using a Sharpie, but I'm not going to use a Sharpie. I'm actually going to use a crayon. And I suggest if you have a crayon, I would use a crayon because this next part is really tricky, but really cool. Okay, so my biggest advice is we're pretty much going to be tracing over everything, but press hard with your crayon. You want a nice dark line because we're essentially trying to build up a lot of crayon so that way it's going to transfer over onto the other side. In class, we would be using oil pastel, but because we don't have oil pastels at home, I mean, if some of you do, if you have oil pastel at home, go for it. That will be your best option. It might get a little bit smudgy and messy, but in class, we would be using oil pastel. And so you can see I'm just kind of taking my time, making sure to go over that line that connects all my letters. At one point, I'm pressing so hard with my crayon that I break it. So that's just kind of goes to show how hard I'm pressing with my crayon, and I'm really trying to make a nice black line. I'm going to fast forward this. Okay. Once you have it all traced, you are going to fold it back in half. And you might need to look and see which side you can see through the easiest. It looks a lot different on my camera, but in close you guys can see it, and you can see it a little bit there. And so basically what we're going to do now is you're going to take a pencil again, and you are trying to trace over that crayon area. And you want to press kind of hard with your pencil, but you need to make sure that you're still in control and lining it up on that crayon mark because we're going to transfer it to the other side. So if you look in a second, I'm going to open it up, and it transferred that crayon onto the other side. And so that way it's perfectly symmetrical. It's perfectly mirroring what we want. And so take your time, go slow. This is kind of a lot to do, so take your time when you're filling it in. I'm going to fast forward it a little bit. And you can see I'm just kind of tracing it exactly how I see it. Pressing hard. And then at the end, when you open it back up, it should have it perfectly transferred. But you might notice that this side is not as bold or thick as when we initially drew it in crayon. So I'm just going to go back over it. There, I broke my crayon because I was pressing too hard. And so I'm going back over it, just trying to make it look really bold and neat and the same on the other side. And then that will be it for this week. Okay, so you're going to then hold your paper vertical again. And next week, we're going to transform our names in this image into some sort of creature. So by looking at it right now, if you think that you see some sort of creature showing in yours, awesome. But I'll talk to you guys next week about really taking whatever you have and trying to turn it into a creature or monster. Okay, I don't want to give you guys too much work for this week because that kind of is a lot transferring it, and it is tricky. Okay, I do not need to see a picture of this until the very end of the project, so if you do want to send me a picture, you guys can. It's optional, you don't need to, but if you do, I would love to see how they come out. And of course, if you're having a hard time, um, you can email me or send me a picture and say, this is what's happening with mine, any suggestions, and I would love to help you out. But yeah, I hope you guys have fun with this. It is tricky, but I know you guys can do it, especially after the last project you guys did. And I will chat with you guys next week. All right, bye.